The alien woman stood near the edge of the city platform, where the tall towers slowly faded into mist. The sky above her world carried soft colors, always changing, never fully still. For most of her people, the sight was beautiful. For her daughter, it meant nothing. She held the small hand of her child gently, careful not to grip too tightly. The child's eyes were open, but they did not follow the movement of the world. Her species was born with sharp vision, able to see far into light patterns and energy flows. Being blind was rare. Being blind from birth was almost unheard of. The woman had learned long ago not to expect help. Her name was Serla. She was not poor, but she was not important either. In her society, worth was measured by contribution, and caring for someone who could not perform standard roles was considered a private matter. Sympathy existed, but responsibility did not. She had searched for months. Some caretakers refused openly. Others accepted briefly, then left once they realized the child would never improve. Many spoke kindly, but their voices always carried distance, as if they were already preparing to walk away. The child sensed these things even without sight. She could hear the hesitation in voices, feel the stiffness in hands. Each time someone left, she became quieter. Serla blamed herself for every silence. They lived in a small residence below the upper levels of the city, where sounds echoed more clearly and light was less harsh. The child preferred it there. She learned the shape of the rooms through touch and memory. She counted steps, listened to air currents, and followed vibrations through the floor. But Serla worried constantly about the future. Her daughter would grow. She would need guidance, education, protection. And Serla knew she could not do everything alone. That was why she came to the integration center. Humans had arrived years ago, following a long period of peaceful contact. They were strange beings, physically fragile, emotionally intense, and unpredictable. Many alien species respected them for their persistence but avoided close contact. Serla did not trust them, but she was running out of choices. Inside the center, voices blended together in unfamiliar rhythms. Humans spoke with their hands, their faces moving in expressive ways her people rarely used. Some aliens watched with curiosity, others with clear discomfort. Serla waited quietly, her daughter standing close beside her. That was when the human soldier noticed them. He had been standing near a wall, observing more than speaking. His uniform was simple, marked by symbols of a military long past its purpose. His posture was calm, but his eyes moved constantly, scanning not for danger but for detail. He saw the way the child did not react to visual displays. He noticed how her head tilted slightly toward sounds, how her fingers traced patterns in the air. Most importantly, he noticed how carefully the woman positioned herself, always between the child and the world. The soldier approached slowly. He did not speak at first. He knelt instead, lowering himself to the child's level. He made no sudden movements. The child stiffened, sensing a new presence. "It's okay," Serla said softly, though her own heart tightened. The human smiled, not wide, not forced, just enough. "My name is Aaron," he said, speaking slowly, clearly. "I won't touch her unless you say it's okay." That alone surprised Serla. Few ever asked. She nodded. Aaron extended a single finger not toward the child but toward the space between them. The child hesitated, then reached out, brushing his glove lightly. She frowned in concentration. "You sound different," the child said. Aaron chuckled softly. "I get that a lot." Serla watched closely. Humans were known for emotional displays, but this one was controlled, careful. "What do you want?" she asked. "I heard you were looking for help," Aaron said. "I'm not a professional caretaker, but I have experience with people who learn the world differently." Serla studied him. "You are a soldier." "I was," he replied. "Now I'm figuring out what else I can be." Her society valued clear roles. His answer made no sense. She hesitated. "My daughter cannot see." "I know," he said gently. "That doesn't mean she can't understand." The child tilted her head again. "He doesn't treat me like I'm broken," she whispered. That simple sentence struck Sarah harder than any rejection she had faced. Still, trust did not come easily. She invited Aaron to their home only after several more meetings, always supervised, always cautious. He never complained. He never pushed. Instead, he listened. He learned the child's step-counting system, memorized her sound cues, and adapted to her rhythms rather than forcing his own. He spoke to her as if she were capable, curious, intelligent, because she was. He taught her to map rooms through echoes, tapping lightly and explaining how sound returned differently from walls, doors, and open space. He showed her how to use textures to remember locations. He described colors not as visuals, but as feelings and temperatures. Blue was calm, red was warmth, yellow was movement. The child absorbed everything eagerly. Sarah watched from a distance at first, expecting disappointment. Instead, she saw her daughter change. She laughed. She asked questions again. She walked with more confidence, her steps steady, her hands relaxed. One evening, as the city lights hummed softly outside, Sarah finally spoke what she had been holding back. "Why are you doing this?" she asked Aaron. He thought for a long moment. "Because someone once did it for me," he said, "and because humans believe that no one should face the world alone." That belief was foreign to her culture, and yet it worked. Days passed, then weeks. The child began noticing things others missed, small vibrations before system changes, shifts in sound that warned of mechanical problems. Her way of sensing the world was different but not weaker, stronger in some ways. Sarah realized something she had been afraid to admit. She was no longer searching. The human soldier had not come with promises or technology. He had come with patience. And that, she was beginning to understand, was humanity's most powerful trait. The days began to settle into a quiet rhythm that Sarah had not known for a long time. Morning sounds drifted through the lower levels of the city, soft vibrations from transport lanes above, and the distant hum of energy lines. Her daughter learned these sounds like a language. She knew when the city was waking, when workers moved, when the air systems shifted. Aaron arrived at the same time each day. He never came late and he never rushed. He always announced himself from a distance, letting his footsteps speak before his voice did. The child smiled whenever she heard them. Sarah noticed everything. She noticed how Aaron spoke to her daughter as if she were an equal, not a task. He did not praise her for small things as if she were fragile. He praised effort, curiosity, and patience. When the child failed at something, he did not rush to fix it. He waited. He let her think. At first, Sarah feared this approach. In her culture, efficiency mattered. Problems were solved quickly or replaced. Watching someone struggle without intervention felt wrong. But her daughter did not see it as struggle. She saw it as learning. Aaron introduced new exercises slowly. He asked the child to listen to the room with her eyes closed, even though her eyes already saw nothing. He clapped softly and asked her where the sound came from. He tapped different surfaces and explained how sound behaved differently on metal, stone, and organic material. The child grew excited when she answered correctly. "You see," Aaron said once, "your world talks. You just have to know how to listen." The child repeated the phrase later to her mother, proud and confident. Sarah felt something tighten in her chest. It was not fear. It was hope, and it scared her more than fear ever had. As weeks passed, others in the lower levels began to notice the changes. The child no longer stayed close to walls. She walked freely, counting steps less often, trusting her senses more. She greeted neighbors by voice alone. She laughed openly without hesitation. Some watched with curiosity, others with quiet judgment. Sarah heard the whispers. "Why rely on a human? Humans are temporary. This will not last." She tried not to listen. Aaron, for his part, seemed unaware or uninterested in the opinions of others. He focused on the child, on progress measured not in speed but in confidence. One afternoon, he brought a small device. It was simple, not advanced alien technology, but human-made. It emitted soft pulses of sound. "It's not a replacement for your senses," he explained to the child. "It's just another tool." He showed her how the pulses changed based on distance and space. The child explored the room with it, her face focused, her hands steady. "I feel the room breathing," she said quietly. Aaron smiled. Sarah watched from the doorway, her emotions tangled. Humans use tools differently, not to control but to support, not to replace weakness but to work with it. That night, Sarah asked Aaron about Earth. He described it simply: a world full of noise, chaos, and contradiction. A place where humans survived not because they were strongest but because they adapted, because they helped one another when logic said it was inefficient. "In war, that's what kept us alive," he said. "Not orders, not weapons, each other." The word war made Sarah uneasy, but Aaron spoke of it without pride or anger, only memory. She wondered what it meant to leave such a life behind and choose this instead. Change came faster than she expected. A representative from the city's social council arrived one cycle without warning. The council rarely involved itself in private matters unless a system imbalance was detected. The representative's voice was calm, neutral. "We have received reports of unusual developmental changes in your child." Sarah felt her body tense. The council member explained that the child had been unconsciously alerting maintenance systems to small environmental shifts, pressure changes, energy flow irregularities. Things that normally went unnoticed until they became problems. "She perceives patterns differently," the representative said. "This is unexpected." Sarah knew what the next words usually were: liability, risk, containment. Instead, the council requested observation. A demonstration. The child was afraid at first. New spaces were difficult and the council hall was large and unfamiliar. Aaron stayed close but did not interfere. He spoke quietly, guiding her breathing, reminding her to listen. When the test began, the child stood still. She tilted her head, she listened. She described changes in sound, rhythm, and vibration. At first, the council members doubted her words. Then systems confirmed them: minor faults, small instabilities, real ones. The room grew quiet. Sarah's heart raced, but she did not interrupt. When it ended, the council representative did not speak for a long time. "This ability," they said finally, "could be useful." The word stung. Useful. Sarah stepped forward. "She is not a tool." The representative looked at her, surprised. "We did not say she was." But Sarah had lived long enough to know how her society thought. Aaron placed a hand lightly on her shoulder, not to stop her, just to remind her she was not alone. The council left with promises of discussion. Afterward, the child was exhausted but proud. "I did good," she said. "Yes," Sarah replied softly. "You did." That night, Sarah realized something important. Her daughter's future was no longer defined by what she lacked. It was defined by what she offered. And that change had come from a human who refused to see limits where others saw only failure. As days turned into cycles, the council's interest grew. Observers visited. Data was collected. But Aaron never changed how he treated the child. He did not push her harder. He did not turn learning into performance. "Growth needs safety," he told Sarah, "not pressure." Sarah found herself repeating his words when doubt crept in. She also noticed something else. She was changing too. She began questioning her culture's assumptions. Why independence was valued over connection. Why care was seen as a burden. Why love was treated as inefficient. Watching Aaron and her daughter together made those beliefs feel hollow. One evening, as the city settled into its quiet phase, the child asked a question that caught them both off guard. "Will he leave?" she asked her mother softly. Sarah froze. Aaron stayed silent, giving Sarah space to answer. "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "Humans move often." The child nodded slowly. "But even if he does, he already changed my world." Aaron swallowed, emotion visible on his face. Sarla realized then that this was more than assistance. This was connection, and connections once formed did not vanish easily. The future was still uncertain. The council would make decisions. Society would react. Change would bring resistance. But for the first time since her daughter's birth, Sarla was not afraid of what was coming. Because whatever the world decided, humanity had already left its mark. Not through force, not through technology, but through care. The city felt different after the council visit. The sounds were the same, the lights still hummed above the lower levels, and the transport lanes continued their steady rhythm. But Sarla felt as if the air itself was watching. More visitors came, always polite, always distant. They spoke carefully, choosing words that sounded neutral but carried weight. They asked the child to repeat her observations, to explain how she sensed things others could not. Each time the child did her best, though she grew tired more quickly. Aaron noticed. He adjusted the lessons, adding more rest, more quiet time. He reminded the observers that the child was still a child, not a system. Some listened, some only nodded. Sarla stayed close, her protective instincts sharper than ever. One evening after the observers left, the child sat quietly on the floor, running her fingers across the textured surface Aaron had helped design for navigation. She was thoughtful, not sad, but deep in thought. "They like what I can do," the child said. "Yes," Sarla replied. "But they don't really see me," the child continued. Aaron felt something tighten in his chest. He had heard similar words from humans who had grown up feeling different. "You're right," he said gently, "and that's why your voice matters." The child tilted her head. "Even if I can't see them." "Especially then," Aaron answered. The next council session was larger than the last. Representatives from multiple levels attended, their voices echoing across the wide chamber. The space was designed for visual impact, tall and open, but the child stood calmly, focused on sound instead of shape. This time, Aaron was not allowed to stand beside her. Sarla protested, but the council insisted on neutrality. Aaron stepped back reluctantly, trusting the child more than the system did. When the session began, the council presented data, charts, predictions, benefits. They spoke of how the child's abilities could improve city efficiency, reduce system failures, increase stability. Not once did they speak her name. Sarla felt anger rise, but she waited. Then the council invited the child to speak. The chamber grew quiet. "I hear things you don't," the child said simply. "Not because I'm better, just because I listen differently." Some council members shifted uncomfortably. "I learned that my world isn't smaller," she continued. "It's just shaped another way." She paused, taking a slow breath. "Aaron taught me that." The mention of the human caused a ripple of reaction. "He didn't give me tools to be useful," she said. "He gave me time and patience and care." Sarla stepped forward then, unable to remain silent. "My daughter is not an asset," she said firmly. "She is a person." And she became confident not because of systems, but because someone believed she mattered. The council chamber was silent. One representative finally spoke. "Your words are noted." It was not approval, but it was not dismissal either. After the session, the council announced a temporary decision. The child would not be separated or assigned. Instead, a new study group would be formed, focused not on extraction of ability, but understanding development. It was the first time such language had been used. Change moved slowly in Sarla's society, but it had begun. Outside the chamber, the child reached for Aaron's hand. "You weren't there," she said softly. "I was listening," he replied. "Just like you." That night, Sarla and Aaron talked long after the city quieted. "You could leave," Sarla said. "They would not stop you." "I know," Aaron replied. "Why don't you?" she asked. He looked toward the sleeping child. "Because this matters," he said, "and because I finally feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be." Sarla understood then that humans did not always stay because they were required to. Sometimes they stayed because they chose to. Weeks passed. The study group met regularly but under new rules. The child set boundaries. She rested when needed. She learned when she wanted to. For the first time, the system adapted to the individual, not the other way around. Other families began to notice. Parents of children who struggled in different ways asked questions. Some quietly sought advice. Sarla shared what she had learned not as a lesson but as a story. Aaron became a quiet presence in the community. He fixed small things. He listened more than he spoke. He treated everyone the same way he treated the child, with respect. People began to trust him. One day the council released a public statement. It was short, careful, and historic. They acknowledged that difference was not failure. They announced new care programs, modeled not on efficiency but on support. No one mentioned humanity directly. They did not need to. The influence was clear. On the evening the announcement spread through the city, the child stood on the platform where her mother had once stood in fear. The wind moved gently around her. She stretched out her hands, feeling the air shift. "The city sounds happy," she said. Sarla smiled, tears in her eyes. Aaron watched quietly, knowing that this moment did not belong to him. Later, the child asked him a question she had been holding inside. "What do humans call people who stay?" she asked. Aaron thought for a moment. "We call them family," he said. The child nodded, satisfied. Sarla looked at him, truly looked at him, and realized her search had ended long ago. Not with a contract, not with a solution, but with a human who chose care over convenience. And in doing so changed an entire world without ever raising a weapon. The changes did not arrive all at once. They came slowly, like quiet footsteps in a familiar room. At first, most people barely noticed them. Life in the city continued as always. Systems ran, transport moved. Work cycles repeated. But beneath the surface, something important was shifting. Sarla felt it every morning when she woke. There was less fear in her thoughts. Her daughter no longer hesitated before stepping outside their home. She walked with calm confidence, her senses tuned to the living rhythm of the city. She greeted neighbors by name, by voice, by pattern. People began to greet her back, not out of obligation, but recognition. Aaron had officially left the integration center. His role there had ended, but no one asked him to go. He simply stayed. He moved into a small living space nearby, close enough to hear the familiar sounds of the lower levels. For the first time in many cycles, he was not a soldier, not an observer, not a temporary guest. He was just there. The council's new care program began quietly. It did not receive much attention at first. There were no large announcements, no celebrations. A few families were invited to participate. A few caretakers were trained differently. Less pressure, more listening. Sarla was asked to share her experience. She did not speak like a leader. She spoke like a mother. She explained how fear had shaped her choices, how loneliness had almost broken her, how one human had changed everything without demanding anything in return. Some listened closely. Some dismissed it as emotional thinking. But emotional thinking, it turned out, was exactly what the society had been missing. The child became a symbol, though no one officially called her that. People watched her move through public spaces with ease. They noticed how she paused when the city changed, how she warned maintenance crews before problems formed. But more than that, they noticed how happy she was. That was harder to explain with data. Aaron continued teaching, but differently now. He encouraged the child to teach others, not techniques but awareness. She showed other children how to listen, how to feel the world instead of only seeing it. Some children tried it for fun, others discovered they liked it. Sarla watched this with quiet amazement. Her daughter was no longer adapting to the world was adapting to her. One afternoon, a young council representative visited their home, not officially. No formal uniform, just curiosity. "I wanted to understand," the representative said, "why humans behave this way." Aaron smiled faintly. "Which way? Why you stay," the representative replied, "when there is no requirement." Aaron thought carefully before answering. "Because caring isn't something we turn off," he said. "It's how we survive." The representative nodded slowly as if something long ignored had finally made sense. That night, Sarah realized she no longer felt like she was being watched. She felt supported. The city changed its physical spaces next. Subtle changes at first. Textured walkways, sound markers, softer transitions between levels. These were not just for the blind. They helped elders, children, anyone who moved differently. People began to understand that accessibility was not weakness, it was wisdom. Aaron was offered a formal role: advisor, trainer, consultant. He declined most of it. "I'll help," he said, "but I won't turn this into authority." That answer confused many, but Sarah understood. He did not want power, he wanted connection. The child asked him one day why humans refused to be perfect. Aaron laughed quietly. "Because perfection breaks when it's touched," he said. "We prefer to bend." That answer stayed with her. Years passed. The child grew taller. Her voice deepened slightly. Her confidence settled into something steady and unshakable. She still could not see, but she no longer thought of that as something missing. She thought of it as focus. New children were born into the city with differences once considered limitations. Now, they were met with planning instead of panic, care instead of correction. Sarah saw fewer mothers standing alone at the edges of platforms. That was how she knew the change was real. Aaron grew older too. Lines formed at the corners of his eyes. His movements slowed slightly, but his presence remained calm and strong. The city treated him as one of its own now, though no official declaration was ever made. One evening the child, no longer really a child, sat beside him, listening to the distant hum of the city. "Do you miss Earth?" she asked. "Sometimes," he admitted. "Why did you really leave?" she asked gently. He was quiet for a long time. "Because I was tired of being brave only in emergencies," he said. "I wanted to be brave in everyday life." She nodded, understanding more than words could express. Sarah watched them from a distance, feeling something warm and steady settle inside her. She had once searched for help in desperation. Now she lived inside a community shaped by care. The council eventually released a full reform statement. It acknowledged that emotional support was not inefficiency, that inclusion improved stability, that humanity's influence had revealed blind spots no system could detect alone. No one resisted openly anymore. There was nothing to fight, only something to learn. On the anniversary of Aaron's arrival, the city held a small gathering. Not a ceremony, just a shared moment. Music played softly. People spoke freely. Children laughed. The young woman stood at the center, listening to the layered sound she loved so much. "This is my favorite part," she said. "What?" Sarah asked. "The feeling that everyone is here," she replied. Aaron smiled. The city lights shimmered above them, unseen by some but felt by all. Humanity had not conquered this world, it had joined it. And in doing so, proved once again that its greatest strength was not force, not technology, not ambition, but the simple, stubborn choice to care. Time moved forward in quiet, steady ways. It did not rush, and it did not pause. It simply continued, carrying the city and its people into something new. Sarah noticed that the city no longer sounded the same as it once had. The sharp, strict rhythm of efficiency had softened. There was more variation now, more pauses, more moments where systems waited instead of pushed. Her daughter, now a young woman, noticed it too. "The city listens better," she said one morning while standing near the open platform. The air flowed around her, warm and familiar. "It doesn't interrupt itself anymore." Sarah smiled. She had learned long ago to trust her daughter's way of understanding the world. The young woman had become known across the city, though not as a symbol or a model. People did not speak her name with formality. They spoke it with warmth. She was someone you could talk to, someone who would listen without rushing you. She worked with the new care networks, helping families adjust to differences they once feared. She never positioned herself as an expert. She simply shared what she had lived. "I didn't need to be fixed," she would say. "I needed time." Those words spread further than any official statement. Aaron still lived nearby. He moved more slowly now, his hair touched by gray, his hands showing the marks of age and work. But his voice was steady and his presence remained calming. Children still gathered around him, not because he told stories loudly, but because he listened closely. He had become something rare in the city, a constant. Serla often watched him from a distance, remembering the fear she once carried. The fear of being alone, the fear of failing her child, the fear of a future that had felt impossible to imagine. Those fears no longer guided her. The city had grown into something that could hold them all. One cycle, visitors arrived from another system. They were curious, cautious, and clearly influenced by old thinking. Their society, like Serla's once was, valued perfection and output above all else. They asked many questions. How did this change begin? Why did you allow inefficiency? Why prioritize care over optimization? The council answered carefully, but it was the young woman who gave the simplest response. "We didn't allow inefficiency," she said. "We allowed people." That answer confused the visitors. But confusion was no longer feared in the city. It was welcomed. The visitors spent time walking the lower levels, listening to sound-marked pathways, watching children of many abilities play together without separation. They saw elders moving confidently with new supports. They saw differences treated as normal, not special. They left changed, though they did not say it openly. Change rarely announced itself. That evening, Serla and her daughter sat together in their home, the same space that once felt too small for hope. Now it felt just right. "Do you ever wish things had been easier?" Serla asked quietly. Her daughter thought for a moment. "No," she said. "If they were easier, we wouldn't have learned how to listen." Serla reached for her hand, feeling the steady warmth there. Aaron joined them later, carrying a small device he had been working on. It was not advanced, not impressive by technical standards. It translated subtle vibrations into gentle tones designed for shared awareness. "Not for you alone," he explained. "For anyone who wants to feel the city differently." They tested it together. The tones blended with the natural sounds, adding depth without noise. The young woman smiled. "It feels like the city is speaking in layers," she said. "That's how humans learn to survive," Aaron replied, "by paying attention to layers." As cycles turned into years, the city's influence spread beyond itself. Other systems adopted similar care-based models. They did not copy blindly. They adapted just as humans always had. Serla received messages from distant places, mothers asking questions, caretakers seeking reassurance, leaders admitting uncertainty. She answered when she could. "You don't need to know everything," she would say. "You just need to stay." Staying had become the city's quiet philosophy. Aaron's health eventually began to fade gently without drama. He remained active, but there were days he rested more. The young woman stayed close during those times, guiding him with the same patience he once gave her. Roles had shifted. Care moved in circles. One afternoon, as the city hummed peacefully, Aaron asked to sit on the platform overlooking the lower levels. The sounds were familiar, comforting. "You built something lasting," he said softly. Serla shook her head. "We built it together," he smiled. "That's the best kind." The young woman stood nearby, hands resting lightly on the railing, feeling the air currents she knew so well. "I don't remember a time before this," she said, "but I know it mattered." Aaron reached out and she took his hand. "It mattered because you mattered," he said. When Aaron eventually passed, the city did not hold a grand ceremony. That would have gone against everything he believed. Instead, people gathered quietly across the lower levels. They stood. They listened. They remembered. Textured pathways were renamed without announcement. A care center kept his simple methods alive. Children continued learning how to listen to the world. Nothing was lost. Years later, the young woman became a guide for intersystem councils, not because she sought leadership, but because people trusted her presence. She spoke simply. She listened deeply. She reminded societies that progress did not always look like advancement. Sometimes it looked like stopping. Serla grew older too, surrounded by community. She no longer feared the future. She had lived long enough to see fear replaced by understanding. One evening, as the city lights shimmered above, the young woman stood where her mother once stood alone. The platform no longer felt like an edge. It felt like a meeting place. "The city sounds full," she said softly. Full did not mean crowded. It meant connected. Humanity's legacy in this world was not written in monuments or laws. It was written in habits, in pauses, in choices made quietly every day. And as the city continued forward, listening to itself and to those within it, one truth remained clear. Care was not a weakness. It was the strongest force this world had ever known.